Hi guys, Rob here from Nutridyne Europe. Thanks for all for attending the webinar with Dr. Robert Silverman today on health and immunity. I'm now going to hop off and let Dr. Silverman talk to you guys. Hope you enjoy it and have a great afternoon.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be on to talk to everybody. I understand this is a new theme for everybody here, in that we've really never talked that much about health and immunity prior. Essentially, in recent weeks, many of our nation's practitioners' practices, mine included, have undergone significant transformations. I am in New York State, and I am in Westchester County, which was at least the epicenter. I live 3 miles away from what you saw on 60 Minutes. We as chiropractors were deemed essential, but now we're deemed essential for emergencies. I'm not sure what that all means. Nevertheless, many of my colleagues are doing what we are now. We're doing telehealth, telemedicine. So if you have some questions about that, when we're done with the webinar, I'm happy to share some ways to get that going. I understand that you guys are in a very strong lockdown. So let's really talk about today. Let's see how today can help us, our families, our friends, and of course, our patient bases. So I understand you may be confused, concerned, overwhelmed with information that has emerged in the recent weeks. Without question, I'm going to try and give you some leading edge material to enable you to handle this health epidemic. So without further ado, let's discuss the idea of natural approaches to health and immunity. One of my favorite sayings is that you can't control the virus, but you can control the host. And you should share that with your patients. We can't do anything about what the virus is doing outside. It's an invisible foe. But the host, us, our friends, our patients, there's a lot we can do to build their immune system. But, let me give you a little background on this virus. Seasonal flus are human viruses. They're typically a DNA and an RNA chain that make up the virus, which is typically recognized by our human immune system. This virus is unique in that it started animal to animal, and then the animal virus mutated and it transferred from animal to human. The problem at that point was there was no natural or acquired immunity to this specific strain of virus. So the RNA sequencing of the genes inside the virus wasn't human, so we couldn't fight it off. It then transferred, as we said, from animal to human, and once that happened, it was sort of a new contagion phase. The coronavirus, which dated to December 2019, it mutated and made the jump from person to person. And within that 2-week mutation, that's when we saw all the cases of coronavirus coming out. Now, coronavirus is not a new concept. We've had coronaviruses. This is COVID-19 or SARS-CoV-2. It's very different. Some people have talked about it as a seasonal flu. I think you guys really know about it. It's not. It's actually 2 different strains. The 2 strains that it has, the most prominent one is the S and the L. Chronic disease are affected more because they actually can be affected over 10 times more than the regular healthy people. And that's what we really want to talk about, is who is the target? Who are the people that really have to take these extra steps? The typical symptoms are fever, cough, fatigue, not a runny nose, and you'll see in most of the people who are sick, a lot of shortness of breath. So the factors that make us more likely to contract COVID-19 are very simply CVD, diabetes, obesity, hypertension, age. We lose our immune system as we age. Our thymus gland shrinks. Chronic pulmonary disease, liver, kidney, autoimmune conditions, which really shows that our adaptive immune system, will go into immune system a little bit, is aberrant, and chronic neurological diseases. Interesting enough, you will see hypertension and obesity come to the forefront as the top reasons why people are dying or being hospitalized. Now, obesity, we know, is a lifestyle. There are functional medicine components that lead to hypertension. So most of my material is clearly going to be in America because that's what we get. So the numbers where we are really no different than where you are. And I have all access to all these New York numbers because, like I said, I'm in the middle of it all, if you will. So the leading comorbidities among COVID-19 deaths. So as of April 6th, this was the most recent one, 86.2% of the deaths involved at least one comorbidity, number one being, believe it or not, hypertension. Diabetes also being high. Again, obesity, diabetes, these are all things within the lifestyle and what we do within our functional medicine, functional nutrition skill set. So hospitalization, hypertension was almost 50%, obesity about 48, chronic lung like asthma 35, and diabetes and CVD 28. Yes, I do realize that's well over 100%, but people can have more than one comorbidity. So hospitalization rates where we are very interesting. It's a little factoid, 45% non-Hispanic were Caucasian, 33% Black, with a population in America of only being 13%. The virus is adversely or disproportionately affecting African Americans in America. Hospitalizations over 65, 43%. 50 to 64, 31%. 18 to 49, 25%. Let's relook those numbers. People who are over 65, the number one reason they were hospitalized is hypertension. Let's take a look now from 50 to 64, obesity. 18 to 49, obesity. America has an obesity problem. UK also has one. It's just quite not as prominent. Nevertheless, it's still prominent. Hospitalization lasts 7 days, and 80% of the people have a shortness of breath like we discussed previously. Some more stats about the comorbidities. 71% of those hospitalized with COVID-19 in the US and 78% of those in intensive care have, and I'm hammering this home, underlying health conditions, diabetes, chronic lung, and heart disease. Interesting, 25% of those infected with COVID-19 may not show symptoms. So they may not show symptoms, they may feel good, they may be great carriers. I am in an hour, literally when I get off this webinar, having a phlebotomist meeting me outside my house. I'll have her meet me on my porch. It's a pretty nice day, maybe in a driveway, and they're going to draw my wife's blood and ours to see if we have been exposed. And from there, we'll decide if we're going to take the PCR test. I feel good. My allergies are bothering me. Very different symptoms than COVID-19. We've been in the house. We've been adhering to social distancing. But we're very interesting because the antibody test, which is something I think we could talk about on another setting, is really, really going to be the, if you will, the standard bearer. They're talking over here that if you have antibodies, they may let you use a passport and things like that. So little food for thought. Increased odds of severe COVID-19. Patients age 50 and over, 2.5 times more likely to progress to severe cases of COVID. This was on 53,000 patients, a substantial sample size. The increased odds of severe illness were very simply males, smoking, comorbidities, and of course the kidney and the lung. And when I really explain the essence of the virus, you'll understand why COPD and kidney are issues that really lead you down a damaging path. So this was 72,000 plus cases as of February 11th, 2020. In China, 3 of the cases were 80 years or older, 87% of 30 to 79, 8% in their 20s, the teens, 1%, and below 9, about 1%. The fatality rate there was 2.3. It was very high, obviously, in the 80 or older. Now, understand that those are the people who got tested. You'll see a slide coming up that really the fatality rate is less than it's being reported because not everybody's getting tested. As a matter of fact, I just heard a number that even in New York, only 6% of New Yorkers have been tested. So there's a potential effect of the coronavirus damaging the cardiovascular system because it can induce vascular inflammation. Interesting, 30% of patients lose their sense of smell and taste. So it really speaks to the idea, if you're losing your sense of smell and taste, there's damage to the cranial nerves. Now, it's not uncommon in a strong flu to lose your sense of smell, but smell and taste with the cranial nerves imply that there is some damage to the central nervous system. Neuroscience News has spoken about that. It's just not something that's chewed about, if you will, or talked about in the local media, yes, at this point. However, the loss of sense of smell and taste is without question some damage to the central nervous system. I have a patient that tested positive. They have the antibodies. They've been cleared to go back to work. They're a firefighter, and it's been about 6 days since he's tested negative on the PCR, and he does not have a sense of smell or taste. They do say it's supposed to come back, but for this individual, a 29-year-old strapping young man, he still hasn't got it back. So interesting. Here we have a median incubation period is about 5.1 days. And you'll see that prominently when we talk about IgM and IgG and the antibodies. It sort of makes sense. But at 5.1 days, as an FYI, the first 7 days of the virus is viral replication. After that 7th day, between the 7th and 10th day, you're going to see that cytokine storm. And we're going to go into detail on that. And I'm going to show you how to reduce it and prepare people appropriately for the cytokine storm. Coronavirus symptoms. Fever. These are symptoms between severe and non-severe people. You'll see the first two, fever and cough. There's not much of a difference between severe and non-severe. There is a difference in fatigue between the severe and non-severe. The shortness of breath is dramatic. Those who have severe issues are at 44%, and those who don't are a little under 6%. That's a substantial change. So essentially, where I am in Westchester, if a patient of mine calls the hospital, the doctor, and they say, I have a fever and a cough, they'll say, okay, do you have shortness of breath? And they say, no. They said, we'll send somebody to test you. Don't come in. Don't come to the hospital. We're a little too busy right now. Now, there's sputum production. There's a 10% difference. That shortness of breath and chest pain, again, if I can reiterate that. Interesting with the myalgia, because many of my patients and neighbors who have tested positive say they're getting a lot of muscle aches. There's your chill, dizziness, headache, sore throat. I know Rob will get you a copy. I'm going to send him a PDF so you can all review my slides. Interesting that there's eye ocular abnormalities. 1/3 of the sample size had abnormalities involving the eye, like conjunctivitis, chemosis, which is swelling of the conjuncta, and epiphora, which is an overflow of tears, and the face. Obviously, the eye is one spot which it enters into. This was from the Washington Post. Great statement. The coronavirus isn't alive. That's why it's so hard to kill. The basic premise is viruses aren't alive. They're activated or they're inactivated. And they, without question, want to replicate. And they replicate quite quickly. The perfect host for a virus is a human, because they love protein and fat, and our membranes are made up of that. So interesting in that most viruses' intention is not to kill the host. So this is a very unique, it's sort of called a sticky, sneaky, evil virus, because there's fatalities. The whole premise is for a virus to keep a host and find other hosts. The ultimate virus, as been depicted in many different scientific journals, is herpes, because herpes lies dormant in our central nervous system, and once in a while it rears its ugly head. What I like about this quote from a virologist at Johns Hopkins University, he's speaking about the virus. They break into your home, eat your food, use your furniture, have 10,000 babies, and then they leave the place trashed. So adjusted fatality rates by group, again, we're doing that according to the Lancet here. Our number is 1.38, but the actual number is probably less than 1%. And they're even pushing that number down because, again, not everybody's getting tested. So this was interesting in the New England Journal of Medicine, in that they really talked about the time and the ability for the virus to live. So let me give you some stats. It's very easily transmissible on surfaces up to 72 hours. Those surfaces are plastic and steel. It's 24 hours on cardboard. So if you get a package, here's what we do. We're still receiving packages. We go outside with our gloves. We open a package. We take everything out of the package and we leave it on the door till the next day. The virus, and of course we clean it, disinfect it, wear gloves. We're doing all those things so we don't transmit it in the house amongst the two of us. Right now, I just live with my wife. 4 hours on copper, and it's 3 hours airborne aerosol. You're going to see some interesting stats from that. The virus is easily killed with antibacterial agents, alcohol 60 to 80%, 75% is the sweet spot. One quick thing, why am I not letting the phlebotomist come in? Well, it happens to be a female. She's wearing shoes, and shoes can carry the virus in. So the virus has an exponential decay, by the way, across all of these conditions. So even though it's there for 72 hours as an example for plastic, it's not as potent. Now, everybody knows, and they all talked about the Diamond, Prince, and Cruz, the passengers. They actually found that the virus was on a variety of surfaces from infected patients up to 17 days after the cabin. It was weak, but it was there for 17 days. And one more thing that I want to share with everybody, there's a number called RO or R0. Essentially, it means if I'm infected, the percentage of people, of the amount of people that I can infect. And the RO or the R0 is approximately anywhere between 2 and 2.0. I think they've averaged it out at 2.2 for coronavirus. Whereas when you look at the measles was 12 to 18. So now this just came out, 27 feet for distancing. I'm coughing. I have like I said, my allergies are raging here. But they're talking about these pathogenic bearing droplets of all sizes can travel from 23 to 27 if the person is coughing and sneezing. So it is passed in the air. I'm not trying to scare anybody. These are the numbers. I think that many of us will be exposed and many of us will not have any symptomologies. So why does it spread so easily? It's a great question because so many people have been concerned about this. So let's go into some interesting detail in that the SARS-CoV, which is the previous one, and CoV-2 share 86% of the same genomic sequence. Specifically, a few genetic studies have investigated the microscopic structure of the virus, a key protein on the surface, and a receptor in humans that may collectively explain why the virus can spread so easily. So CoV-2, however, has a very unique specific structure that allows it to bind at least 10 times more tightly than the corresponding spike of the original SARS-CoV to the common host receptor. This is actually due to the fact that the spike contains a site that recognizes and becomes activated by an enzyme or protease called furin. This furin isn't talked enough in the media, if you will. However, the presence of the furin enzymes on all cell surfaces actually cleave and activate the SARS-CoV-2 into a wide range of tissues and organs all at once. That's the takeaway. It can attack different organs and tissues at the same time. Once activates, it unleashes this NLRP3 inflammasome, leading you to, so you all know, this cytokine storm. This furin cleavage allows a virus entry into all cell types, making COVID-19 easily transmissible at rates up to 1,000 times greater than the virulent SARS. So it's very contagious. It's not nearly as fatal as everybody says. The tropism, and this is a big takeaway of the coronavirus, is to dive to the and directly connect to the furin cleavage site in the spike protein. And this is not present in the original SARS-CoV-2. It is present, in SARS-CoV, it is present in SARS-CoV-2. The idea of the presence of furins on almost all cell surfaces allow a dramatic increased ability to fuse the host together. So the bottom line is it's the spike proteins and the furin activations. It's not the whole story. The spike protein binds to a receptor on human cells called angiotensin converting enzyme 2, ACE2. So this ACE2 has really been the entry point, and somehow with this triple spike, it's able to infiltrate this ACE2, and within this ACE2, that's that furin enzyme inside, and that's why it's so virulent, if you will. With that being said, just so you know, ACE2 is on our gut, our liver, and our kidney. And yes, I want to emphasize our gut. So let's move on and look at this ACE2. ACE2 is the host receptor responsible for mediating infection by SARS-CoV-2, the novel corona responsibility for coronavirus 2019. So treatment with the anti-ACE2 antibodies does disrupt the interaction between the virus and the receptor. There's been a lot of conversation about all these ACE2 inhibitors or ACE2 stimulators in nutrition. There's nothing substantiated yet at this point. So the science of the soap and how it kills the coronavirus is interesting. Why soap? Everybody's asked, why soap? Why soap and water? Well, very simply, soap is made up of fat. The virus or the coronavirus, they're made of an RNA, a fat, and a protein. The soap breaks the protein. This is a great little video if you guys want to look it up. VOX has it. It breaks the protein, it breaks the fat bilayer. And while you're washing your hands for 20 seconds or longer, the virus is broken apart and rendered inactive. The warm water does its trick, and it actually takes it down the sink, and you've actually broken the virus. Grandma was right. There's nothing better than soap and water for a virus. So here's some different concepts to immune system, which provides sort of 3 levels of defense against disease-causing organisms. Number 1, barrier. You got to prevent entry, skin and mucous membranes. So interesting, it gets in your nose, it gets in your eyes. And then we also have barriers in our stomach acid and digestive enzymes. When you really think about the gut as a barrier, we realize that many people have digestive issues. Beneficial bacteria that live in the colon, the gut microbiota. Notice one of the initial barriers, again, is the emphasis of the gut. So you have your innate immune system. You have an immune system. It has 2 specific parts, an innate, which God gave us, and acquired, which we'll talk about, which we made over the last we as the human species over the last 10,000 years. So an innate immunity calls on neutrophils and macrophages to destroy foreign invaders. After that, it switches to the acquired immunity, which is your B and T cells. The interesting thing is that the change from innate to acquired, and acquired is where we get the autoimmunity, is determined by dendrite cells in our gut, which is our periscope. It's very, very interesting that 80% of our immune cells are in our gut, and it actually has the determinant between innate and acquired immunity. So what should we do? We kind of talked about the problem. I've always known to talk about a problem, I need to give a solution. So here are some solutions that we can share, again, with ourselves and with our patient base. We should avoid certain foods. I have an acronym called GPS. No gluten, no processed food, no sugar. Take care of your GPS. Gluten is damaging. We all know that it damages our gut. 80% of our immune cells are in our gut. Processed food, I went shopping with my wife. Yes, we wore the mask. And we saw lots and lots of meats available, believe it or not, grass-fed, of course, wild fishes we saw some fruits and vegetables, but all the packaged crap, that was gone, and that was in the Whole Foods. So again, no gluten, no processed food, no sugar. Take care of your DNA. No dairy. Dairy is deleterious to your gut. It's one of the highest allergy foods. And if I can say right now, a food allergy home test is a huge takeaway, because then people know what they may be allergic to that's stimulating inflammation, and they can take that out of their diet regimen right now. DNA, no dairy, no nicotine, and no artificial sweeteners. Artificial sweeteners have shown to increase the incidence of stroke and dementia by 2 to 3 times. Follow an anti-inflammatory diet, which means all the things I mentioned above. In addition to taking out grains, you can incorporate ancient grains, fried foods, and of course, I want to emphasize those processed foods. And as I just mentioned earlier, you may want to detect or avoid certain food sensitivities. Diet for immune resilience. So immune resilience is your body's ability to be resilient to foreign objects and getting an inflammatory response. Proper diet equals enhanced immunity, whereas a poor diet will give impaired immunity. Food is the potentiator for inflammation. Food is the potentiator for information. Food, let medicine be your food, as we've said and heard multiple times. So in addition to supporting immune system, make it that you eat clean, eating a strong priority. So consume wild smash fish, smash being salmon, mackerel, anchovies, sardines, and herring. Eat a plant-based diet, great choice. Fruits and vegetables. My suggestion with them is clean them and cook them. I had a whole Facebook Live yesterday on that. I do a Facebook Live, just so you guys know, every Monday through Friday, 1 o'clock Eastern Time. Today, we're actually going to talk about shopping and how to shop in COVID-19 and some of the new things coming out about alkalinity, speaking to the fact that fruits and vegetables allow you to be alkaline, grass-fed meats, high fiber foods, high fiber, excellent to feed probiotics, which enable you to get short chain fatty acids, which are a critical element to have your gut functioning well. Nuts and seeds, chicken soup, grandma's potion for everybody. Chicken soup's great. If I can roll to right to bone broth is great. Try and drink it almost every day. Bone broth, if you have collagen 1 and 3, is great for skin, hair, and nails and gut. Collagen 2 is great for cartilage. If you're going to snack on organic dark chocolate. Consider the herbs of ginger, turmeric, and quercetin. Again, quercetin is going to be seen in a lot of fruits and vegetables. Take an appropriate fluid intake, because we as healthcare practitioners, people who are doing functional medicine, functional nutrition, we are lifestyle practitioners. So to talk about fluid is an excellent example of that. Half your body weight in water, add what you're going to do in exercise. Organic coffee and tea. So, American here, we love our coffee. I know you guys prefer your tea. The oils that I recommend: extra virgin olive oil, avocado, and macadamia nut. You could add in your fruits, avocado, coconut, and olives, all of which are fatty fruits, but great fats. Mushrooms, shiitake, turkey tail, maitake, lion's mane, and as such, that'll be in a product called Immune Support that I'm going to recommend that everybody add into their toolbox right now. Include nuts, avocados, olive oil in your diet. They produce oleic acid from these foods, which stimulate the SIRT1 pathway, which is your great defense enzyme. I would strongly recommend considering a time-restrictive eating, intermittent fasting. Time-restrictive eating means that you fast for a certain period of time. Let's call it 14 and 10. That first number is the fast. The second number, 10, is 10 hours in which you can eat. Intermittent fasting technically means not eating for a day. I know some people are doing it. I'm not so sure I want everybody to try that right now. So therefore, the time restrictive eating in a time frame. If you have any questions on that, I'm happy to answer them. Write your questions in the corner. We're going to stay on a little longer. We're probably going to go over 60 minutes. And in that, we're going to cover a lot of questions, and Rob will read the questions to me, and I'll stay here and answer all of them just up to the time the phlebotomist comes. So we'll talk about that. Intermittent fasting or time restrictive eating, fasting in general, has shown to have a positive effect on your immune system. It induces autophagy. Autophagy is your body's natural way of breaking down old cells, using those cells, debris, as energy to make new cells, and hence its anti-aging. Autophagy won a 2016 Nobel Prize. Get sufficient sleep. Aim for 7 to 8 good quality hours. Sleep is a critical element. We recover during sleep. Our immune system recovers during sleep. Good quality sleep is going to help us ward off anything that attacks us or our immune system. Everybody knows I work for a laser company, so I'm a big proponent of the violet light. Violet light, 405 nanometers, has shown to be antimicrobial, antiviral, and antibacterial. How about a home exercise plan? Work with a practitioner online. I know we have a practitioner online that's doing a great job right now of sharing exercises. So I'm doing a lot of what we call telehealth. So I'm doing a lot of nutrition online. We're doing some chiropractic with exercise online. When I say exercise, exercise rehab, and some of the practitioners are giving them daily things on how to sit, recipes on how to cook. People are cooped up, they don't know what to do, and they're going for the Doritos. And believe it or not, humidity. Humidity is interesting in that humidity of our homes and workplaces can play a major factor that determines our susceptibility to viral infections. So dry air destroys the mucus lining of our airways, so viruses can gain access. So we want what we call a 50% immunity, and that 50% humidity is called relative humidity. Now, I thought this was vastly interesting in that the medical field was without question trying to talk about nutritional support at the time of COVID-19. So taking it from the article, they basically said nutrition is the key determinant of health. More importantly, nutrition is part of the treatment of acute and chronic diseases. This applies particularly to those elements for which an etiology treatment has not been discovered and validated yet. So the medical doctors and the medical field, which is frontline and doing such a great job, know nutrition is important. The problem is right now they don't have access, and some of them aren't trained. They're trained more in emergency medicine. The next day, from the same periodical, they talked about early supplementation. So here were some of the highlights. They talked about the novel coronavirus spreading through the world, and if nutritional care is not properly implemented, malnutrition will affect the patients. So what they said was most patients presented with severe inflammation and many injuries that lead to a dramatic reduction of food intake. So they're talking about how to get people in the ICU proper food, and they realize that their food line or their intake was mostly carbohydrates. They realized they needed more things that are substantial, like the diets we talk about that incorporate good fats and protein. So let's talk about immune support supplements. And yes, I have a plethora of immune supporting supplements. So these are the ones that I recommend for you. I know Rob got a shipment in, that's why we waited on the webinar. So let's go through these and why they're so good. Vitamin C. Everybody knows it's so popular, but it does have a multitude of roles in humans, primarily acting as an antioxidant, and vitamin C is critical for supporting healthy oxidative stress, energy production, and its immune function. I like the vitamin C in a liposomal form, but the key element is in ascorbic acid. Liposomal, just so everybody knows, because I'm going to recommend a few liposomal formulas. Liposomal technology is characterized by an advanced form of a biological nanotechnology to deliver active ingredients to your body via liposomes. And they are vesicles containing fat bilayers. So I like that because they protect the vitamin until it gets to its desired destination. Zinc or zinc citrate, which is an immune support. You want to take it at least 30 milligrams a day. Again, a huge immune supporting nutrient. Then these mixed mushroom complexes, we talked about them. Essentially, clinical evidence shows that supplementing with mixed mushrooms, vitamin C, D, and niacin really improve immune support. Vitamin D3 and K2, we're going to have a lot of conversations about that in some succeeding slides, as with probiotics. So I'll save that for the next set of slides. Glutathione, the master antioxidant. One molecule of glutathione can ameliorate up to 1 million free radicals. Again, glutathione, the master antioxidant. I recommend glutathione, and my strong preference is in the liposomal form. Vitamin C doesn't necessarily always have to be. Beta glucans, again, comes in the immune support. We're going to cover that in some of the succeeding slides. Omega-3s, omega-3 fatty acids are great for cell membrane health. They're also great for the biodiversity in the gut. And elderberry, we're going to cover in a moment. Let's look at vitamin D. Interestingly enough, with the vitamin D is a great vitamin. It should be called hormone D. Vitamin D has the immunomodulating actions against respiratory viruses. So let's take a look. I know this is a very busy slide. The slide is busy in that it really speaks to the influenza. So in the interest of time, Basically, you're seeing antiviral effects against both RSV and the influenza virus. So vitamin D is a strong actor against respiratory viruses. Here's a great study talking about vitamin D to prevent acute respiratory tract infections. Vitamin D supplementation is safe and protected against acute respiratory tract infections. Patients with vitamin D deficiencies did not receive the most benefit. I mixed up the picture, but curcumin is something we're going to talk about. So again, vitamin D. There are two major sources to get vitamin D, those that are exposed to sunlight and food. Vitamin D and its receptor, VDR, regulate the gut microbiome, maintain barrier functions, and inhibit inflammation in the intestines. So this bidirectional host microbiome seems to be related to the vitamin D, VDR in your intestine, which can also impact your lung, liver, and other organs. So take a look at this, the influence of the microbiota on viral infections. So you've got three different things here, and very interesting in that we've got the protection, the indirect promotion, and the direct promotion of being an antiviral immune response. To dig in, the microbiota of the host activates the inflammasome, or should I say, decreases the ability to release the inflammasome of interleukin 1b and interleukin 18, which are the direct culprits of this NLRP3 inflammasome, which leads you down a path of the cytokine storm. So probiotics. And I take this particular probiotic and others with it. In a 12-week study, the participants had contracted a cold 4 times in the past year. The consumption of probiotics reduced the incidence of upper respiratory infection and flu-like symptoms. They increased SIG IgA in the gut. So we don't test for SIG IgA in the antibody test for COVID-19. However, your first line of defense, in addition to natural killer cells, is secretory IgA, which is also released in the gut, obviously, and also in the lung. So it initially gives you a strong response to try and ward off the viral replication phase. Spore probiotic. Let me go into a little bit more detail. It's a spore, or if you will, it's an endospore. It's Bacillus subtilis, which is a soil-based microorganisms. This species is delivered as dormant spores. The endospores encapsulate beneficial bacteria. It makes them stable. Its high resistance to stomach acid results in a more usable probiotic to the small intestine. Some really interesting things about the spore in its ability to form the spore. So this Bacillus subtilis gets encapsulated. If I can metaphor it to an acorn to understand what's inside is the Bacillus subtilis, and it's got this nice shell that protects it going through the stomach. You don't have to refrigerate it. It's very resistant to enzymes, bile, and hydrochloric acid. And some of its key components is that it enables you to adhere, or it to adhere to the intestinal epithelium, and it propagates good bacteria in the large intestine. And as we all know, the large intestine is where a lot of our very damaging gut issues can occur. Beta-glucans in immune support. These compounds regulate the function of the innate immune system. This is part of your immune system, is the first line of defense against viruses and bacteria. It helps your white blood cells bind to kill viruses and bacteria. So beta-glucans, which is an immune support, is a great addition. Elderberry, my goodness, yes, I'm using elderberry right now. It contains several functional bioactive compounds, flavonoids, and phenolic acids. These are great modulators of immune response to decrease inflammation. Please make note, it's shown to reduce interleukin 16, interleukin 6, which I want to circle now as a key culprit in the cytokine storm, and TNFL. Sorry, these allergies are just getting me here. It's terrible. We're having the highest pollen in the history of the region. In any case, immune support supplies. Here is my protocol. I will share it, obviously, now. Take a picture. Again, I'm going to get the PDF, and Rob will get this to you. This is something that I would strongly recommend that you implement as quickly as possible. So vitamin C, 1,000 complex, 1 tablet, 2 to 4 times daily. You will see some upcoming slides where the medical field now is doing it intravenously and doing about 1,500 every 1 to 3 hours. So don't think this is a high dose at this time to support your immune system. Immune support. Immune support has vitamin C, it has some low-level D, it has niacin, it has the zinc citrate that we talked about, selenium, which makes the whole thing go, and a ton of a choice of different mixed mushroom blends. You've got your D3 5000 with K2, 60 milligrams of K2. You can have 1 to 2 soft gels daily. Your Spore Probio, 2 caps daily. Your liposomal glutathione, which we talked about before, omega-3 fatty acids, and Bacticidex. That's where you're going to get your elderberry. It's in a tincture. So cytokines, I call it the double-edged sword exploited by the coronavirus. Pro-inflammatory cytokines defend host cells from invading pathogens, but they're also capable of driving pathological inflammation. During viral infections, inflammation and act in a dynamically opposing antiviral and pro-viral roles. Inflammatory responses can inhibit viral replication and lower infection, but inflammation also has the capacity to release a large number of viruses, further disseminating viral infection to cells like macrophages, which will spread the virus to various other tissues and organs in the body. The takeaway about cytokines are they're inflammatory immunological proteins that are there to fight off infections, but when they're out of control, they can make you very ill. So if I could metaphor it even more, we all need some cytokines for inflammation, but we don't want our inflammation to go high. The idea of a storm is just like a storm in rain, it's too much. Why are these people with comorbidities expressed to a bad cytokine storm? They're already inflamed. Our goal, especially through this, is to build our immune system and to be able to manage and modulate inflammation and keep our barriers strong so this foreigner, this viral foreigner, doesn't infiltrate our body. So the mediators of the cytokine storm are the associated phenotypes with infection outcome. The diagram really shows the functional roles of key cytokines and key chemotypes. So this is for something for you to evaluate and look at, because I strongly suggest, going through the slides and seeing where you are in your knowledge of the cytokine storm, because this is the conversation piece. So the role of ion fluxes in NLRP3 inflammasome. Basically, this spoke to the idea that this particular inflammasome leads to mitochondrial damage and reactive oxygen production. So the key is you want to manage and modulate this down. And you'll see on the next slide, you do have an NLRP3 inflammasome from the gut. That NLRP3 inflammasome is stimulated by LPS, lipopolysaccharide, which is released from the gut as an endotoxin. It stimulates a receptor site at the gut called toll-like receptors, stimulating NF-kappa B, which ultimately release interleukins, interleukin 1B and interleukin 18. And that's why this inflammasome is so damaging within the cytokine storm. So you want to be able to dim these signals, and ways to dim the signals are fish oils, ketone bodies, curcumin, and the like. Please make note of that NF-kappa B, because any of the supplements that can decrease the NF-kappa B are going to help you through this cytokine storm. So let's modulate the cytokine storm. Here we go. Ascorbic acid, vitamin C again. It really suppresses the inflammation response in the lungs. It prevents accumulation of immune cells in the lungs. It minimizes the release of cytokines, slowing down the production and the spread of a virus within the body. And it gives the immune system a much needed boost. Pro-resolving mediators, we're going to go into great detail on, I promise you. Ginger is a flower plant that has been used in traditional medicine. It has a great history of aiding in digestion and supporting immune system function. Elderberry, I believe you can take at this point. I just took it out so people didn't argue about the cytokine storm. Quercetin is your body's own natural antihistamine. Quercetin also is antiviral. Nitric oxide is part of a defense against bacteria and viral infections, and it also inhibits the NLRP3 inflammasome. Curcumin, also known to decrease NF-kappa B, increases the NRF2 oxidative pathway or antioxidative pathway, which is a key pathway. You will see a slide on that. Low-level laser, which I spoke about before, not only is antiviral, antibacterial, and antifungal, when you add a 635 nanometer laser, it also decreases these released interleukins. Sitting nettles, I'll have a slide on, and PEA is going to be a remarkably beneficial supplement that most people unfortunately don't talk about. In addition, I believe, and you can still have it here, vitamin D. The former CDC chief, Dr. Tom Frieden, said coronavirus infection risk may be reduced by vitamin D. So he talked about it all having a positive effect on the cytokine storm. So the cytokine storm in the lungs, what does it lead to? Well, essentially ARDS and ALI. So ARDS is acute respiratory distress syndrome, and the other one is acute lung injury. Essentially, they are dependent upon the activation of the inflammasomes from the cytokine storm. New York hospitals are utilizing vitamin C, and they're utilizing them to the tune of 1,500 milligrams 3 to 4 times a day. Dr. Andrew G. Weber said the patients who received vitamin D did significantly better than those who did not get vitamin C. It helps a tremendous amount, but it's not highlighted because it's not a sexy drug. Succeeding articles and periodicals have talked about the intravenous vitamin C in addition to ozone and oral vitamin D, and these people are not having to go on ventilators or in the ICU. I believe, and I can only hope, more and more people will go down this alternative route. Pro-resolving mediators. Without question, one of the hidden gems. Exogenous administration of these precursors have shown to decrease cytokines and chemokine expression. They actually decrease induced pulmonary inflammation. There is the citation. Essentially, without going into large detail, omega-3 fatty acids are supposed to be able to convert to pro-resolving mediators. Unfortunately, the host, us, are not able to make this conversion effectively, probably at this point to the tune of about 3%. When you look why, you see the cytochrome P450 and the 15 LOX enzymes, which are usually very aberrant in most humans, in the UK and America now. Pro-resolving mediators, you can create them, but right now the choice is unfortunately to supplement with them, allow for the resolution of inflammation. In that resolution of inflammation, they also allow for the homeostasis between the resolution of inflammation and the initiation, which is critical, so resolution doesn't run too high or too long. The takeaway here is you can't have somebody, there was a lot of conversation pieces about ibuprofen, a non-steroid anti-inflammatory. Non-steroid anti-inflammatories decrease pain, but they impair healing. They impair healing in one of the ways by not allowing pro-resolving mediators to function. There were other reasons why they were talking about the ibuprofen. However, it makes no sense if somebody's taking an NSAID for pain and to give them a pro-resolving mediators. I get all my patients off their NSAIDs. So curcumin, wanted to go into a little bit more detail, blocks the cytokine release, therefore decreasing most of the cytokine storm. Interleukin-1, the real guy that's really been circled to elevate the cytokine storm, which is interleukin-6. Interleukin-6 is also implicated as an FYI in back pain. So the suppression of cytokines actually correlates with clinical improvement models of conditions when the storm plays a role in mortality. Vitamin D deficiency directly related to ARDS. Vitamin D deficiency is common in people who have developed ARDS. Therefore, adding vitamin D is a great choice for people who are trying to avoid respiratory damage. Very, very busy slide. Very, very busy slide. I was really going to go into detail, with this slide, and I've come to the realization when I was looking at it again last night. Let's touch base. Let's hit the highlights. Essentially, the overexpression of interleukin interleukin 6 has a potential negative consequence on the viral immune response. So scientific evidence supports different scenarios where the imbalance on interleukin production after viral infection can affect viral clearance, promoting viral persistence and chronic infections. It does so by decreasing or reducing cytolysis, reducing cell apoptosis because of this upregulation. So this interleukin 6 leads you down a very deleterious path and is now truly implicated in addition to the NLRP3 inflammasome as being one of the reasons that this storm is so damaging to overall health. Here's another study that just came out in March, and here it was with patients. They had 9 severe COVID-19 patients. The symptoms were seen in order of fever, cough, dyspnea, and fatigue. Common comorbidities, hypertension. Interleukin 6 was increased with body temperature. Interleukin 6 was increased, believe it or not, with CRP, LDH, and D-dimer. The conclusion was the dynamic change of interleukin, CAT6, can be used as a marker for severe COVID-19. Vitamin D receptor actually inhibits the NLRP3. Keep taking your vitamin D. The VDR is a negative regulator of the NLRP3 activation. So therefore, by blocking NLRP3 with vitamin D, you're not going to release that inflammasome. Again, a great slide for vitamin D, really showing the mechanisms for innate and adaptive immune responses for vitamin D. So you're seeing vitamin D from the skin, from sunlight, from diet, from supplementation, and its effect, or I should say its positive effect on the liver, kidney, being antibacterial, but also improving natural killer cells. NRF2 inhibits interleukin expression. So we're going to talk about the NRF2. NRF2 pathway is a phase 2 pathway in detoxification that increases, it's a critical pathway to increase antioxidant production. So the supplements, or what you can do to increase it, is of course always eat a good standard healthy diet, fish oils, curcumin, green tea extract, milk thistle, sulforaphane, ashwagandha root, good organic coffee, everybody. Sorry, tea didn't make the cut. I apologize for that. And caloric restriction, i.e. intermittent fasting, time restrictive eating. So stinging nettles reduces inflammatory cytokine release and reduces inflammatory biomarkers like interleukin 1, interleukin 6, C-reactive protein, and TNF. Stinging nettle also interferes with the way the body sends pain signals and decreases the sensation of pain. So Nervies, this is something new. This was a find by the Nutridyne science team, happened to be on a team, and we were going through different things, and the chief science officer, Rick Mayfield, found it. So PEA, which is a real tongue tire if you want to say it, is a bioactive lipid that plays a key role in the ECS pathway responsible for promoting balanced systems, including the central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. It not only promotes relaxation and nerve function, it's really been shown to be naturally produced in every cell of the body in response to inflammatory markers. So with over 350 reviewed papers, Nobel Prize was devoted to PEA, and in many of its indications, there were significantly favorable outcomes in 5 of the 6 trials looking at acute respiratory disease and influenza. So the mechanisms in which PEA works, the multiple mechanisms were the anti-inflammatory mechanism of inhibiting TNF-alpha and NF-kappa B, which will decrease the release of interleukins, which ultimately attenuate the potentially deadly cytokine storm. So that product, believe it or not, was called Nervies. Interesting, PEA was marketed for the treatment of influenza and treatment for common cold under the brand name Impulsin in the 60s and 70s. The dosing at that point was generally 600 milligrams 3 times a day for up to 3 weeks, and some studies actually continued longer. So we're going to start from the bottom up, just because I mentioned Nervies. Nervies has the PEA. You're not going to get that in too many different spots. Most people don't realize that Nervies is a great choice. And when I've added that, people are telling me how much better in general, I've been using it for a little while, how much better they felt in general, even before this COVID-19 overtook us. Curcumin 400, you want this available form of curcumin, so it's BioCur. That's a great choice. Resveratrol Plus, the reason I like it, resveratrol works with a natural feed loop. It also includes green tea and quercetin, so it's a product that has a multi-layered formula. Obviously, PRM Resolve is a great choice. We talked about that. Pro-resolving mediators enable you to decrease inflammation because it allows for the resolution of inflammation. And now we have vitamin C 1000 complex also. Some interesting stuff as we get towards that hour line. I said we're probably going to go over, and I'm still going to answer questions. So fecal oral transmission, believe it or not, may be part of the COVID-19 clinical picture. So many of the coronavirus patients have experienced vomiting, nausea, and the such. Therefore, researchers found that the RNA and proteins from SARS-CoV-2, which is obviously the viral cause of COVID-19, are shed in the feces and persist many days after the respiratory symptoms abate. You're going to find these next 2 slides interesting in that 10% of the people have mild GI discomfort. The manifestation is very consistent, as we said earlier, the ACE2 receptors, which is a definitive entry point for SARS-CoV-2 in the gut. The most abundant cell membranes are the lung and the enterocytes of the ileum and the colon. Ultimately, here's your takeaway. 53.4% of the patients had SARS-CoV-2 RNA in the stool, and 23% of the patients tested positive in the stool, despite testing negative for the viruses in respiratory samples. So again, the gut is 80% of our immune system, where our macro and micronutrients are absorbed. So there's a small but growing body of clinical evidence indicating digestive system may serve as an alternative route for SARS-CoV-2. So in addition to the respiratory tract, it's being stressed that clinicians carefully identify the patients with initial GI symptoms. And again, I could spend an hour on my Dr. Rob's gut matrix. I could explain to you what leaky gut is. Rob and I had talked about it. We may want to come back with a part 2, and a part 2 will really explain the gut's implication in more detail and go into more antibody testing. If you're interested in that, please at this point just say part 2 in the question area so he knows, and we'll get that together really quickly and promptly, because the information is always important, but this is a very fluid topic and it's very novel to many people. So essentially, I'm assuming that many people understand that leaky gut is a concept where your gut, which is supposed to be semi-permeable, is too permeable. So with that being said, if you have damage to the gut lining, there's specific things that are going to pass the gut that shouldn't, like a virus, like a pathogen, like an undigested food particle, and stimulate your immune system. If you have leaky gut, in addition to getting COVID-19, leaky gut is going to lead you down a path of inflammation. And again, if the body is inflamed, if the host is inflamed, clearly when you get attacked by such a virulent virus like COVID-19, in my opinion, leaky gut should be considered a comorbidity. So leaky gut puts a strain on the heart with chemical and toxin overloads. It also leads to a higher incidence of blood sugar problems, body composition, obesity. So you can trace a lot of these comorbidities back to your gut health, musculoskeletal faults or musculoskeletal aches, gut on fire, brain on fire, the bidirectionality of a gut to the brain. One little aside that you'll find very interesting as we talk about it, the vagus nerve plays a critical role in communication between the gut and the brain, and the vagus nerve, which is a 90% afferent nerve, attaches to the outside of the gut. feels the signaling from your probiotics or your bacteria or microbiota, and then is able to speak to your gut and send either positive or negative health signals. Vagus nerve is a critical element, and we'll incorporate that in some upcoming webinars, in that the vagus nerve is known to decrease peripheral inflammation. So this is a brief overview from my Dr. Rob's Gut Matrix. Again, I'd like to go into more detail when we have a little bit more time. This is something that's brand new. We're talking about it now. I just did a webinar on it yesterday. Doctors were calling and going, wow, the gut to lung connection. So the bidirectional crosstalk that occurs between the gut and lung has been termed the gut-lung axis. Intestinal disturbances have observed in certain lung diseases, which have been shown to be mediated by the gut microbiota, and some probiotics, which have shown to have effects on lung health and the treatment of respiratory diseases. To me, it stands to reason that a deeper understanding of the gut microbiota and its role in respiratory diseases will aid in the design and development of improved treatment for lung disorders. The gut and the lung microflora are clearly linked by nutrition, the immune system, digestive and respiratory health through mutual communication linking this intricate axis. So one quick aside about the lung microbiota. It's found in the lower respiratory tract. It's a collection of microorganisms, particularly found on the mucus layer of and the epithelial surfaces. This energy and exciting field of exciting field of investigation is leading to new ways of thinking about the lung and its disorders. So I would want to keep my gut really healthy to help my lung health. So here's the gut-lung communication. Again, I think we're going to go into more detail in the future, but just take a good look at this. The gut-lung is communicating through environmental products, bacteria, bacterial fragments, short-chain fatty acids, which are produced from good bacteria, which is produced and aided by good prebiotics. Your Spore Probio has the best prebiotic. It's called XOS xylo-oligosaccharides. It aids in immune cells bidirectionally, gut and lung, and the signals via the vagus nerve. Once again, that big nerve is very exciting in that it allows for the communication of the virus or the lack of virus and immune cells between the gut and the brain. Most interesting here, this is a great schematic representation of the gut to the lungs and the gut to brain. The gut microbiota speak to the microbiome. Metabolites like short-chain fatty acids stimulate immune cells. The gut is communicating with the brain, the gut's communicating with the lung, the brain's communicating with the gut, and the lung is communicating with the gut. I sent this to like one of the more renowned microbiota specialists, and I can say this, he just was enamored with this slide that I found. So essentially, in healthy individuals, lungs and gut harbor marked different microbiome. So therefore, the composition of the lung microbiome closely resembles the one of an oropharynx. In a critically ill patient with ARD, the lung microbiome may become enriched with gut-associated microbes. Potential pathogens can enter the lung via breathing and possible translocation from the gut. The resulting state of dysbiosis promotes inflammation and acute lung injury. Essentially, what you're saying is your microbiome for your gut eventually becomes your microbiome from your lung. And last but not least, I really wanted to talk about hypertension and your gut's effect on hypertension. The bottom line is your gut communicates via your vagus nerve with everything between your medulla oblongata and your transverse colon. There's a direct correlation between your gut health and multiple studies and blood pressure. There's studies that are out, I didn't incorporate them here, again, for another day, that shows that when you have an unleveling of good and bad bacteria, you have a higher incidence of blood pressure issues. My Super 7 action plan, as we just go over just a little bit. Number one, reset diet, lifestyle, and mindset. I can get these to you. Reset the diet, eat a good non-inflammatory diet, Mediterranean diet, ketogenic diet, etc. Lifestyle, exercise. There's nothing better than exercising right now. In addition to exercise, you have your yoga, your meditation, your good diet, and keep a positive mindset. Like I said, come follow me every day, 1 o'clock Eastern time. We're talking stuff. I am pumped. I'm happy to help. You want to, in phase 2, in the remove phase, you want to remove unwanted pathogens. You do so that by taking specific things that remove bad bacteria, like oregano oil, berberine HCl. And in this point, you may want to discuss a detox program to remove pathogens. Replace. You want to replace digestive enzymes and stomach acids. Digestive enzymes like betaine HCl, critical element pepsin, protease, lipase, amylase, a lot of good this will do. 60 to 70% of people that you see have digestive problems. By replacing the digestion, they're going to be able to absorb their food better. Regenerate damaged intestinal mucosa, heal and seal the gut lining, heal and seal that gut lining to avoid that leaky gut. Reinoculate. You want to reinoculate after regenerate. Reinoculate with quality pre and probiotics. You want to feed the probiotic with a prebiotic to allow that probiotic to enrich the gut with health signaling. And also that probiotic fed by the prebiotic will lead to something called a postbiotic, short chain fatty acid, which is so critical to overall health. Reintroduce. I can tell you, you probably won't reintroduce with them right now, but you want to reintroduce certain foods which were removed in step 2, not your food that you're still allergic to, and never gluten, dairy, processed food, sugar, and the like, and ultimately retain your health and GI integrity. Let's set a trend at health. Right now, everybody's talking about health. You guys are in lockdown. I'm in New York. It isn't a picnic here right now. We want to be able to retain our health, our family, our friends' health, and our patients' health. So here's a 1-month gut protocol that I would recommend to start people on right now to support your gut health during this trying time. Dynamic GI Integrity, which is a powder that incorporates a lot of different nutrients that aid in decreasing your gut inflammation. Pro-resolving mediators, which we discussed before. Digestive Complete. Digestive Complete is very exciting in that the Digestive Complete has digestive enzymes, betaine HCl and pepsin, ox bile, taurine, fennel powder, and dandelion extract. It has all your digestive needs addressed. Spectrum AR has that oregano oil that I talked about. That oregano oil is great because it removes the airway bad bacteria, upper respiratory. And Aspergillosis is a yeast that functions as a probiotic, whether someone's taken an antibiotic or not. The Aspergillosis is yeast that will not be killed by it. Just a little, please keep your eye out. My new upcoming book, Super Highway to Health, 7 Steps to Optimizing the Gut-Brain Connection. It should be out between August and October. Nutridyne is kind enough to support me with it, and we'll be doing a lot of book talks and videos speaking about the material there. The epilogue and reason the book's being held is obviously going to be an additional chapter on immune system and immune system with viral components. Jim Rome, a fave of mine, he said, take care of your body. It's the only place you have to live. And I appreciate you guys giving me a little extra time before we ask questions. Let me tell you how you can get in touch with me and ask me. There's my website, drrobertsilverman.com. Facebook and Instagram are great. I answer it all the time, Dr. Robert Silverman. If you guys are interested, we're building a huge Facebook group, Mastermind Laser Group. We talk nutrition in it. Just send an invite or just send a request and I'll approve you as long as you're a practitioner. So I'm going to open it up for questions and give it back to Rob.
Thanks very much, Rob. Yeah, great talk. I think the most common question was part 2, so I think you'll be back for part 2. It's got a few questions for you. Does Dr. Silverman think COVID-19 affects certain blood types more than others?
It's a great question. I didn't put that slide in. The studies show that blood type O seems not to get it as commonly as blood type A. So as on a personal note, my wife is Asian, of Asian Oriental, I'm allowed to say that, descent. She's Malaysian. So the Asians showed, for whatever reason, an ACE2 receptor stickiness. So not really good, very strong, very healthy, fit as a fiddle, as they say. But she's also type O. So I think there's a balancing act there.
Okay, great stuff. What about the supplement BP Natural? The ingredients help macrophages, which eat endothelin. a cause of high blood pressure?
I think it's a great product, and I think that there's nothing wrong with you using it. It does all that it says. It's just that I didn't want to give you 20 and drive you and Rob crazy, but feel free to add that if you've had great results with it.
For liposomal C, do you prefer ascorbate or ascorbic acid?
I prefer the ascorbic acid if possible.
Okay, and lots of ICU doctors are against using vitamin C with high ferritin in COVID-19. Can you elaborate anything on that?
Well, you know what? I never want to take a shot at somebody at the front line, but I'll tell you this, John Hopkins isn't even using intravenous vitamin C. Those hospitals that are, those doctors are coming out and saying, it's not, nothing stops. We cannot say nothing stops a novel virus. That would be inappropriate on us. But with having said that, it appears that every emergency room doctor that is giving intravenous vitamin C, add maybe a little ozone in some instances, like I cited in the lecture, has been getting outcomes, and they're very excited about the outcomes. I spoke to one in Long Island. I can't release it because they had heard me do a webinar, and I gave them some dosage ideas in a supplemental form, and they went with the IV, and they're having great results. It's really decreasing the respiratory issues.
Fantastic. Is it always necessary to take vitamin D with K2?
Yes, I would only take vitamin D3 with K2.
And lastly, do you use Spore Probio alone, or can you use it alongside other probiotics such as other ultrabiotic lines?
I'm sorry. I do take the Spore Probio, and I do take it with another probiotic. So you'll be fine, because I'm a big believer in biodiversity in the gut. And what you just said is a stellar protocol for that.
We just got another one in. What do you think of COVID-19 being a blood disease and not a lung disease?
You know, there's a lot of stuff coming out as an exosome. I'm not really sure where they got that. I don't know if it's just a lung disease. It just seems that it loves the lungs. I mean, we have a famous anchor who's talking about and going through it. It seems to like the lungs. It likes the mucosal lining, and it likes those ACE2 receptors. That seems to be its sweet spot, its jam, because of its sticky protein and its extra spike proteins that it has.
Fantastic. And that is it in terms of the questions. So thank you everyone for the questions. Thank you for attending, Rob. Thank you so much for a fantastic talk.
Oh, my pleasure. Hope to see you guys soon.
Yeah, we'll get a number 2 sorted very quickly.
Yep, we'll chat.
All right. Thanks very much. Cheers, guys.